Retroduction. Why Ken's wrong. Retroduction is one of Ken Wheeler's buzzwords. Find out how he uses this term constantly, but incorrectly, and also why his underlying argument is fundamentally flawed. Retroduction is an unfamiliar word to most of us, so let's start by defining it. It literally means leading back or bringing back. In logic, philosopher C.S. Peirce defined retroduction as the passage of the mind from something observed or attentively considered to the representation of a state of things that may explain it. Doctors do this all the time when they start from our symptoms and think back to which diseases may be causing them. Detectives do the same thing. They arrive at the crime scene, gather all the information they can, and then think backwards to try to explain what happened and how. The important thing to understand about retroduction is that it doesn't usually lead to a definitive conclusion. As Peirce explains, its conclusion is usually regarded as a more or less likely conjecture. So retroduction can give us one or more working theories to investigate further. However, unlike deduction and induction, it can't give a valid or sound answer to a question. Contradicting conventional logic, Ken Wheeler insists that retroduction is superior to induction or deduction. The angry photographer is very fond of the word, apparently because so few people have heard the term before. That gives him the opportunity to sound profound and stretch the truth at the same time. It's hard to find anything in the angry photographer's work that clearly defines retroduction. This passage is about as close as it gets. In several of his videos, he repeats, "All retroduction, of course, is actualization. Objective negation leads to subjective synthesis." The key word here is negation. Ken Wheeler confuses retroduction with the process of elimination. All he's really saying is that we can explain what something is by ruling out what it's not, objective negation. One of Ken Wheeler's analogies involves the proverbial needle in a haystack. As the angry photographer puts it, just as a fool might for hundreds of hours pick through a pile of straw phenomena in search of a needle Atman, the wisest of men in mere seconds lights a match to the phenomena straw, which quickly burns and blows away, leaving before his feet the needle sought. And this is, of course, part of the expediency as core to the via negativa methodology. We have to wonder why any sane person would destroy $100 worth of hay to find a 10-cent needle. As Ken Wheeler's hero, Plato, put it, arguments that make their point by means of similarities are impostors, and unless you are on your guard against them, will quite readily deceive you. Retroduction, as philosophers define it, would be useless for finding a lost object. Someone would use retroduction, for example, if they found an object and asked themselves, how did this get here? So Ken Wheeler doesn't even know what the word retroduction means. He should know better, but there's a much bigger concern with his arguments around the process of elimination. The Theoria Apophasis host incorrectly assumes retroduction is synonymous with via negativa, a term he lifts without attribution from the 5th century Neoplatonist thinker Proclus. Related terms Kentucky Ken conflates with retroduction include objective negation, theurgy, disobjectification, neti-neti, negative theology, and apophasis. Yes, that's where the channel name Theoria Apophasis comes from. The Greek word apophatikon means negation. The Theoria Apophasis creator also cherry-picks the word theurgy from some of the Neoplatonists. This practice evolved out of folk mysticism in the ancient world. Theurgy involved magic spells and incantations that supposedly invoked gods and spirits. Ken Wheeler's biggest hero, Plotinus, founded Neoplatonism, but he wasn't a big fan of theurgy. As he put it, "It perplexes me greatly to form a conception how they who are invoked as superior beings are likewise commanded like inferiors." We can also summarily dismiss Ken Wheeler's claim to be applying theurgy because Platonists reject enlightenment through independent study. Plato himself taught that when students rely on collecting random books instead of listening to skilled teachers, they will be hearers of many things and will have learned nothing. They will be tiresome company, having the show of wisdom without the reality. He couldn't have described Ken Wheeler more accurately. Put simply, saying I'm not a tree and also not a car doesn't tell you anything about me, and it certainly doesn't prove I exist. Back around 600 CE, the Neoplatonist philosopher Dionysius the Areopagite explained why negation can't reveal God or the Absolute. He writes that God, or the first cause, transcends all negation by preeminence of its simple and absolute nature, free from every limitation and beyond them all. So, listing off a bunch of attributes that something lacks doesn't somehow bring it into existence. The one-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people-eater isn't two-eyed or hornless or burrowing or green or vegan, but that doesn't make him real. So retroduction isn't negation, and besides, despite his fondness for old mottos, Kentucky Ken seems unfamiliar with the Latin proverb negatio probat nihil. Negation proves nothing. However, there's something we can conclude through negation. Ken Wheeler is not educated, not astute, not credible, not honest, not rational, and not objective. So it is safe to conclude he's not worth watching or reading.